Morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good. Thank you all for coming here to this meeting this morning. I am the chair, Dr. Vamidi Alsing, an independent senator, and I want to welcome you all to the 34th meeting of the Joint Select Committee on Local Authorities, Service Commissions, and Statutory Authorities, including the THA. This is our committee's second public hearing pursuant to its inquiry into the current systems and procedures for regulating and operations of pharmacies and the practice of pharmacy in Trinidad and Tobago. The first hearing was convened on May 22nd, 2019, and we had a very good discussion with some of you all who were here already, and we intend to continue this discussion, and we also have some new members that we invited on board, so new parties are on board. For members of the listening and viewing audience, please be invited. I'm inviting you to post or send any comments via the Parliament's various social media platforms, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. And on this occasion, I have the pleasure of meeting with representatives of the Ministry of Health, the President of the Pharmacy Board, the Pharmaceutical Society of Trinidad and Tobago, and representatives of Superpharm Limited. I would now like to invite members to introduce themselves, starting with the officials from the Ministry of Health.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. I'm Asif Ali, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Health.
Good morning. I'm Dr. Roshan Parasram, Chief Medical Officer, Ministry of Health.
Okay.
Good morning. I'm Anissa Donat-Sibu, Principal Pharmacist, Acton, Ministry of Health.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that's it. Good. Okay.
Yeah, good morning.
Good, sure.
I'm Chair and other members, Pascan, Chief Chemist and Director of Food and Drugs.
Good. Welcome all.
Good morning, Chair and members. Barbie Rupchan, Legal Advisor.
Okay. Welcome, Bobby. Now I'd like officials from the Pharmaceutical Society of Trinidad and Tobago to please introduce yourselves.
Good morning, Junior Walcott, President.
Good morning, David Amoroso, Secretary.
Yes. Welcome. Now the Pharmacy Board of Trinidad and Tobago.
Morning, Andrew Harmon, President.
Welcome. And officials of Superpharm Limited.
Good morning, Glenn Maharaj, CEO of Superpharm.
Good morning, all. Sharon Thompson, Corporate Pharmacist, Superpharm Limited.
Welcome all. Good. I would like my members of my committee to please introduce themselves, starting.
Good morning. My name is Khadija Amin. I'm an opposition senator and a member of the committee.
Good morning, everyone. Esmond Ford, Member of Parliament for Tunapuna, member of this committee.
So I'd like to remind the members of the public the objectives of this inquiry is to assess the growth in the pharmacy industry, to evaluate the efficiency and effectiveness of the Pharmacy Board Council in executing its mandate, and to determine whether the resources, systems, and procedures of the Pharmacy Council are sufficient to allow it to operate efficiently. I must say, the pharmacy industry in Trinidad and Tobago plays such an important role. We have an aging population. People are using more medication. We find that, new drugs are being, registered. And it's challenging sometimes for persons to keep up, some persons to keep abreast of the drugs that exist, the side effects, actually the treatment modalities that exist. And pharmacies do play an important role. And due to their important role also, they also have such a role that, that their service that they give to the public is very important. And again, as this committee tends to look at any sort of improvements we can give to this body, and also any way that we can look at any shortcomings that, we can look and bridge any gap that may exist out there for public safety. At this stage, I would like the chief officials to make brief opening remarks, probably not exceeded more than 2 minutes, if you could. Mr. Asif Ali, PS of the Ministry of Health.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, colleagues from the ministry and other agencies, members of the viewing and listening public. Chair, I want to first thank the committee for inviting the ministry here again to the second sitting so that we can participate in this inquiry which I believe provides a forum for us to examine not only the successes but challenges being encountered by the relevant agencies as we seek to ensure the safety and quality of the pharmaceuticals provided to our population. As you said, and we agree, pharmacies, pharmacists, they work with the healthcare professionals as part of the national health sector to provide patients not only with the medication, but as you said, the drug information, counseling, and also in accessing other health-seeking behavior and modalities. It is in this context that we at the ministry again reaffirm our commitment to ensuring that the provision of quality pharmacy services through the enforcement of the relevant legislation under our remit, as well as in collaboration with the Pharmacy Board, continues. We look forward to today's proceedings to again give us some suggestions and recommendations as we move forward to providing an efficient and effective service that will redound to the population of Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ali. Would Mrs. Junior Ford Walker, the Honorary President of the Pharmaceutical Society, please give us some opening remarks?
Good morning, all chair and members, viewing the listening public. The Pharmaceutical Society of Trinidad and Tobago has as its motto the development of the profession of pharmacy by improving the quality and standards of the profession. And to that end, we are very grateful that we have been given an opportunity to be heard, because nothing is perfect, but we can always make things a little better, and we surely need that in pharmacy.
Thank you. Would Mr. Andrew Harmon, the President of the Pharmacy Council, please give us some opening remarks?
Yes, I'm here in a common thread thus far of public safety, and I wouldn't mind employing the committee to look at one of the aspects that is infringing on that possibility, and that has to do with the wholesalers dispensing directly to patients. Because when that happens, no counseling, no labeling, no pharmaceutical care whatsoever is dispensed to the patient, and there's great risk of administration errors when that happens.
Thank you, Mr. Harmon. Would Mr. Glenn Maraj, Chief Executive Officer of Superfarm Limited, give us opening remarks?
We would like to thank the chair and members for inviting Superfarm to this inquiry. We have seen a proliferation of pharmacies in Trinidad and Tobago over the last 14 years. We believe the timing is right to enhance our current systems and provide more pharmacy services, example, e-prescription, home delivery services to our customers, consistent with trends we are seeing in the United States, Canada, the UK, and most in developed countries. So we are pleased to be part of this discussion so that we can raise the bar, so to speak, with the way how we position ourselves to our customers. Thank you.
Thank you very much for all your comments. And we would like to have question time where we'll have members of our committee will relay questions to you, and I would like to remind you, when you are answering the questions, please activate your microphones, and also please, for some housekeeping rules, to silence your phones. And at this stage, I would like to start some questions to members who are present. Right. You understand? Yes, sir. Okay. So I'd like to direct the question to the Ministry of Health. We had gotten a response from the Pharmaceutical Society that between 1990 and present, the staff complement of the Drugs Inspectorate Unit was reduced from 14 officers to 2 permanent and 1 short-term contract pharmacist. I would like to know what are the reasons for the depletion of staff from this unit, if somebody could elaborate. Yeah.
Sure, thank you, Chair. So I will maybe start, and I will let Ms. Sibu just elaborate a bit more. So at the crux of it is that there's the issue of succession planning. Within the Drug Inspectorate, we have not entry-level pharmacists. We have the pharmacist 2s, pharmacist 3s. So persons cannot come out or straight from pharmacy school and graduate and enter into that system. Because we have the RHAs, where the pharmacists are now employed in the RHAs, there isn't a readily available pool of junior pharmacists to move up into those positions. So that's part of the challenge we've been having. In terms of mitigation strategies, we've worked with the Service Commissions Department with regard to opening it up to members of the public. When I say members of the public, persons who are not necessarily in the public service, qualified pharmacists, to apply for those positions. So that's a work in progress, as I said. What we're doing in the meantime, and you mentioned it there, in terms of the response from the Pharmaceutical Society, we've been hiring persons on short term to at least bridge that gap with some success. But that is basically where we are. I'm not sure if Ms. Sibu wants to add anything else. I think that's, yeah.
And for the clarification for members of the public, what is the function of the Drug Inspectorate again?
Basically, the Drug Inspectorate Department has the responsibility to ensure that all the required legislations are being, we ensure safety of products, quality of products that's coming into the public health sector and the entire country. We have the responsibility to ensure that the operations of pharmacy within the country are within the legal remit that exists within the country. So we do inspections. We have to ensure that the quality of the medication that's coming in are from reliable sources, basically.
So the quality, so let's say there's a party who wants to bring in medication. You all look at the medication and analyze it and check it. So this is your function?
That's one aspect of the function of the Drug Inspectorate, yes, sir.
So all your products would come through to your chaps for the approval. Do you depend also on like if something is, if a drug is approved in the states, like the Department of Food and Drugs, do you automatically approve it or you go through your own checks and balances?
So we go through our own checks and balances to ensure that it is approved. We have our regulations to approve drugs coming into the country for use in Trinidad and Tobago. And there is a process. Both my Drug Inspectorate and Chemistry, Food and Drug do go through the process of registration for Trinidad and Tobago. For some reason, we also align ourselves to what is approved at the regulatory authorities, the stringent regulatory authorities approved by WHO, where we do have a list of the stringent regulatory authorities for regional reference, meaning that countries in the region can reference those particular stringent regulatory authorities so that we can approve outside of registration into Trinidad and Tobago.
So there's the capability of looking at this directory from World Health Organization and being able to bring in drugs without inspecting them.
If I could just shed some light. So basically, the stringent regulatory agencies from other countries, we use the principle of reliance. So it doesn't make sense, even the US and the EU will use the principle of reliance in terms of drugs. So if someone brings in something from, let us say, FDA territory that has been approved, has been tested, which is very rigorous, goes to EU, EU will actually approve it in a similar fashion without going through the series of tests, because it becomes a waste of resource and a waste of time. So for a smaller country like us, we have to rely on the bigger countries, the ones that would be more stringent. So we are happy to go use that principle as well here, which we have been doing for a few, maybe about 3 or 4 years now, in a big sense. So countries, WHO puts out a list of stringent regulatory authorities. So there's things like the FDA, the European Medical Association, EMA, and a number of other agencies. But PAHO WHO is the one that certifies the list and updates the list maybe every year or 2 years.
Mr. Ford would like to ask.
Mr. Chairman, there could be a number of follow-up questions based on the information coming from the Ministry of Health. Right? I'd like to start with the particular pharmacies. Are there pharmacists currently employed with the Chemistry, Food and Drug Division? How many you will have with that division?
Okay, so the pharmacists are employed with the Drug Inspectorate Department, and the antibiotics and narcotics fall under the Drug Inspectorate Department.
So that's different from the 14 that you mentioned in your report?
No, that is the 14
that's the 14 that you
yes,
in report, right? You mentioned also about the lab, right? There's supposed to be a new food and drug lab. What's the status of that lab?
Yeah, so Chair, maybe I can just jump in there. So the lab, as you mentioned, member, it's a food and drug lab, but it comprises many sections. So you have like a microbiology, a food, the drug lab, different aspects. So the lab is expected, we plan to reopen the lab in the first quarter of 2020. The drug lab, that part, we're looking at, that will be open by mid-2020.
Okay. So therefore, in reference to your statement now, what Dr. Parishram mentioned, that's where the EU comes in, and the bigger countries will do your testing.
So yes, and I mean, he'll expand, but even if we have the lab, we will not necessarily do the tests on those drugs that have been approved by FDA, for example, the stringent authority. Again, because they would have gone through a very rigorous testing process. Those that would not have gone through that process, we would test those.
Okay, okay, okay.
If I may. So testing is twofold. There's testing that would have been done in the past for approval of drugs coming into the country in terms of drug advisory committee. So any new drug that comes into the country would have the drug advisory committee can say that we want to test the sample to see if it actually meets what is said on the spec sheet from the company that is importing. So there's that testing, which if we're going from a country like FDA, they would have tested it rigorously and we can rely on it. There's another set of testing which is aligned to pharmacovigilance, which means that not the one that came in for testing to food and drug, but the drugs that come in the shipment thereafter, which is the more concerning part, and the drugs that are consumed by the population in any country, whether it comes from FDA, wherever it may be, we have a responsibility to test it off the shelves and to do pharmacovigilance, which means taking random samples of that drug from any point of whether public sector or private sector, testing that to ensure that at least they meet the standard that they say they come from, because somewhere along the supply management chain there could be breaches, and we need to periodically test to ensure that there's safety across the board.
Okay, in terms of staff complement,
right, sure.
Presently, you are satisfied with the staff complement?
Well, I think these, as PS and Ms. Sibu has indicated, there is a deficiency in the complement because they are staff that have traditionally come from the public service line. So I think the staff is a little deficient in that light, but both the chemistry, food and drug have inspectors as well as the principal pharmacist division, and together they combine and they are sufficient, but I think we can always have more staff.
Right. And in going forward, based on what your PS mentioned,
right,
the two arms that will come on stream early 2020 and later 2020.
So, Chair, to answer your question, the staff that are in the lab would not be the same staff we were just speaking about in terms of the pharmacists. So you have like med lab, chemists, scientific assistants, so it's a different category of staff. In terms of whether we have staff for the labs, yes, we do.
Chairman, through the Chairman, I want to ask the Ministry of Health. In the submissions that came to the committee before this hearing, the Pharmaceutical Society indicated that the Drugs Inspectorate Division, which we have been discussing, no longer reports to the Pharmacy Board on breaches of the law in private pharmacies. Can the Ministry confirm whether the Drugs Inspectorate Division is actively performing this reporting function? If you are aware of the breakdown, and what measures are in place to reinstate that reporting?
Okay, with respect to reporting, yes, we do report by way of official correspondence to the Office of the Pharmacy Board of Trinidad and Tobago, the Secretary Registrar. We have been at least 16 reports have been forwarded to the Pharmacy Board with respect to breaches within the last 4 years. Within the last 2 months, we've had at least 6 official correspondence based on inspections that were undertaken in the private sector. So we do have official correspondence. Antibiotic that's not registered for use in the country, those medications are seized and brought to the Office of the Drug Inspectorate.
Non-medical persons. So we have a member of the IRO, we have a member of the Accountant Society, also the legal fraternity has somebody at the university. And the whole idea was putting the non-members there so it wouldn't be perceived that the medical council is a boys' club. You have other persons seeking the interests of patients. Do you think it's a good idea that non-pharmacists also, NGO groups, people who may have, patient support groups, should also be admitted to your council sometime in the future by a change of law?
Yes, well, many professions go in that route. We have no issue with it. There's a mainstay work of the council relating to pharmacies, relating to pharmacists, relating to registration, which will continue to remain with the ambit of the pharmacists in it. We do co-opt, we have committees, and if necessary, when we establish committees, we can co-opt. So there's a facility now to utilize any expertise we require. There's a facility to pay them to utilize the expertise, but we don't have the funding for it. So there's no issue with enlarging it, but I'm saying that we are not prevented from accessing those expertise and facilities at this point through committees and through paying for the service.
1 minute. You had as you're on the spotlight, you had mentioned the wholesale, wholesalers actually bringing on stuff into the market. Could you elaborate on that point? Because, we have seen probably drugs turning up, suitcase traders, people bringing in medication that probably, I think it's antibiotics that might need to be registered. Give us an idea, give the members of the public an idea that, how could we stop that? How could we try to, curb that behavior of bringing in suitcase medication that are not approved? Anything you could suggest to at least give this committee some sort of a recommendation here?
Well, there's actually two problems there. One problem is what you are mentioning, that some medication have been coming in, escaping the scrutiny of customs somehow, and that has been happening partially. I wouldn't put any full blame on. There's an issue with the registration of new drugs in terms of the time frame it takes to register new drugs. There have been a lot of improvements with that. There are people who, as an example, this is complaints we hear. You have to submit samples of the medication. This is an example. In some instances, the sample may cost the person who is putting in the application maybe $50,000 in terms of cancer drugs. And I think it has remained stringent that the medication that is submitted for sample must be submitted at the time of the application. The application won't be complete without it. But that has been enforced, although there is full knowledge that by the time that drug is going to be considered, the medication will be expired. In which case, they have to, I'll stand corrected, in which case the applicant have to find another $50,000 to resubmit. So if it is known that the medication is going to expire by the time they will consider it, that requirement to submit the sample should be exempted from the complete application until the time for consideration, at which time they'll do it. So apart from that, the length of time that it takes to register a drug is causing people to find another way to get it here. People, they are saving, it might be unregistered, but it is medication that is saving the lives of people. What happens is that if that can be done, for it to be brought in being unregistered, there is the distinct possibility that counterfeit one might find its way into the system, and that is what we have to protect against. So the registration regime is a significant aspect of what will assist in terms of the prohibitiveness now of getting drugs registered. And they just find ways to get it in because relatives need some of these things to save the lives of their relatives. But that is one part. The other thing that I was really referring to, which is another thing that is propelling this suitcase trade, is that the wholesalers, the legitimate ones now, who get their drugs registered and who are bringing in the medication, they are wholesaling to the pharmacies. That's what it's supposed to happen. for us to sell to the patients, and we get to counsel the patients and so on. While they are doing that, they have agents going to the doctors to inform the doctors of the loophole for the patient to go directly to the wholesaler. So imagine we are getting something for $100 to make a profit of $25 to sell it to the patient at $125. But the patient is being told by the doctor, I'm giving you a prescription, no, and it's not a prescription, it's an order, to go directly to the wholesaler to get it at the $100. So the pharmacies cannot compete with having to buy at $100 and compete with the person who's selling it to us at $100, selling it to the patient. They say they put a markup on it, but the markup is 3%. So they sell it for $103, just to say they're not selling it at the price that they sell it to us at. So that is causing pharmacies also, through their various persons who have been bringing in suitcase trade, to look for ways to get the medication at a cheaper cost. And that practice, I just want to say that practice is a horrible practice where the pharmacist at the wholesale establishment is not able to write a label for the patient, is not able to counsel the patient, is not able to guide the patient, is not able to do anything because the patient is getting it under the guise of an order to take back to the doctor. But it's an order for them to take home and take with no guidance whatsoever.
Yeah, I will come back to you after, I think.
Yeah. And Mr. Harmon, what have your counsel done with regards to what you just said?
They are doing it fully legal.
No.
They are receiving an order.
No, but it's coming across as it's a complaint.
Right.
It's a disservice.
Yes.
It's unethical.
Right.
Right, but what has your counsel done with regards to what you have just said?
So the people that I think we would keep hearing the AG and so saying, information is different than evidence. The people we have to get the evidence from to prosecute that matter. In the first place, the prosecution is a little difficult because they are abiding by a loophole. The loophole is they don't get a prescription in the name of Andrew Harmon. They get a prescription as the wholesalers for office use, and that is totally legal. So the solution is for the doctors to recognize that they are saving the patient $20 today and costing them thousands in medical care in the future. We have no jurisdiction over them receiving an order because it is legal for the wholesaler to receive an order and dispense it. And in relation to the evidence, you will never get evidence from the person that is benefiting. We need the evidence of the patient to say, the doctor knowingly gave me a prescription for myself, not in my name as he should, but in the name of office use. And we need evidence that they went to the wholesaler and got it, and it was not taken back to the doctor. It was to go home for my use. And the person who has to give that information is saving $50 today. So they will not give the information, because once they give the information, their temporary saving of today is eliminated because they will no longer be provided with the cheaper medication by the wholesaler.
And that information is being provided to us today to serve what purpose?
Well, the public needs to be aware that they are also receiving a disservice to themselves when they do not access what we call pharmaceutical care, which they cannot get by a wholesaler. And they also need to be aware that that activity in the long run, if it causes the closure of a large number of pharmacies, which it will the wholesalers stop closing at 4 p.m. and open until 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 and have branches well distributed like pharmacies are? So when they have an emergency after 4, there will be no place or very few places for them to get their medication. And it is also to sensitize the medical personnel of the disservice, that is the doctors now. Some of them are not extrapolating their thought processes so far to see the far-reaching effects of patients not getting advice on the medication that they receive from a pharmacist because they can't get it at a wholesaler. They cannot.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I would like to bring in Mr. Maraj. Mr. Maraj, you are a wholesaler?
No, we are a retailer.
Retailer. All right. Could you, in terms of some of the comments you would have provided for us with regards to the pharmacy board, appears to be grossly understaffed for even basic daily activities. Regular inspections of individual pharmacies are not taking place. Practice of dispensing medication without the requisite prescriptions and so on. Could you further shed some more light on your comment?
Sure. As stated? Well, firstly, we've heard that we have 350 pharmacies in Trinidad, and the numbers are increasing daily. And as the chairman, the president indicated, one of the key functions is renewal of license. When you talk about 350, and you're talking about a president, a secretary, and probably a part-time, I don't know the details in terms of staffing. Just simply looking at it from a holistic perspective, the resources just to manage that, I don't know how he does it or how the board does it, but I would like to say that we've never closed as a consequence of not having it. However, that presents a significant challenge with the way they have to operate. And then some of the things that we've discussed today in terms of compliance of pharmacies, practices, et cetera, when a lot of emphasis is placed on renewal of license, movement of license, it's just not only an annual thing. You have a lot of activities just based on license and pharmacists moving from one location to the next. That is quite a lot of activities in itself. The question then is that if we have to look at a broader level in terms of the governance of the pharmacy board to take us to another level, do they have the time and resources? And some of the issues that were raised earlier, having cross-functional members within their team, not only just pharmacists, but lawyers, et cetera, I think it is a challenge for the pharmacy board to operate at another level because they're really caught in that renewal and those license issues. So that would be one of the key things that we would like to see is how do we enhance and how do we enhance the role and how can they perform their job in a much more efficient and effective manner, whilst things are getting done.
Sure. Yeah. And the scenario as explained by Mr. Harmon, are you aware of it, the scenario that you just mentioned with regards to the wholesalers and the issuing of direct going to the patients and the prescriptions and so on? Are you aware of that in the industry?
We are aware of it.
I'm aware of it. Okay.
It's a competition against the pharmacy, as the president has indicated, because we have made a significant investment. And just to put it into perspective, the pharmacy business is a high capital-intensive business. The labor cost to run a pharmacy is exceptionally high. The margins, the margins of running a pharmacy, it's getting lower and lower every single day. And when you have also issues in terms of one of the points that you've raised in terms of having your pharmacy open till 11 o'clock in the night so customers can access your pharmacy, it's a huge cost that we've incurred in terms of having security in our stores. In the past, if you look 10 years ago, you would have probably not had a security in your store. Today, we have 2 to 3 security from morning to closure. So when you look at all those costs that are being impacted, we don't want any loopholes within our system. We want the customers to channel that through the pharmacies, and as the president indicated, we have the right resources to provide not only the products, but also the pharmacy care that is required and the counseling. Because that is one of the most significant parts. It's just not simply dispensing drugs, but the kind of support, counseling, advice we could give, and our constant dialogue with doctors, et cetera, on a daily basis at the pharmacy. Those are important parts.
One other question. Ministry of Health, I think in all fairness, feedback, comment on what Mr. Harmon has stated earlier, and in terms of going forward, how can we address that scenario?
I just want to add to that. one of the recommendations of Superfarm in your submission was for the pharmacy, that the pharmacy board appears to be grossly understaffed for even the basic daily activities and for the regular inspection for individual pharmacies and so on. So there's a recommendation or there's a view that the pharmacy board should have some kind of support for at least a secretariat or for it to perform its functions, because at present the pharmacy board does not get any allocations from the state. Have you ever considered, or the ministry ever considered, the provision of a secretariat or accommodation or facilities or anything like that to enable the board to perform its functions?
Chair, maybe I can take members' question and then see if I can answer the first part. So similar to every other regulatory association, the Nursing Council Medical Board, we don't give a subvention to those entities. They are free to charge fees, and if they want to increase the fees, a submission is made to the ministry, which the minister would consider with cabinet approval, and we can approve the increase in fees of the members. But in terms of providing a subvention, that is not provided to those organizations. Again, simply because they are self-regulating, you want to ensure that there isn't the perception of, I don't want to use the word interference, but getting involved in the business of the council. So that is not something that has been done in the past for the pharmacy board or the other boards under the ministry's purview.
Yeah, with regards to the matter of persons going to wholesalers with a script or order, before we proceed with the answer, I mean, my concern is, if I could ask Mr. Harmon, what is the scope of the problem that he has? Because what we have come across in the past is that the practice should be very little. With CDAP and with everything else that is there, it would have been offered, and I know of cases that private physicians would have sent the same order to a company that's used example for some sort of anti-cholesterol medication for somebody that would have been on it for a number of years, and they would have complained about the cost of it to the doctor. So the doctor would write an order directly to the wholesaler, say you'll get it at a better cost, go straight to the wholesaler. They will say exactly how to use the drug. So it's, in terms of not having any counsel, I think the doctor will tell the person, or the person would have been on it for a number of years. It's just a matter of getting it at a cheaper cost. If somebody has an issue with it, I think it is a matter more for the medical board to deal with the physicians than for the Ministry of Health to come into play at that point. But I don't know that the scope of it is great enough that it is. I mean, this is the first time I've heard of it being, I mean, Mr. Harmon has said it will cripple the pharmacy industries and people will close down. That's a big scale, if it has to be of that scale, and I don't think that it is. So I don't know if we...
But then again, members, someone has to lodge the complaint, and this is why I asked Mr. Harmon, what has his council done with regards to the situation? Don't say anything yet, but I'm seeing Ms. Ford Walker there, and I've been, watching her. Shed some light on this particular matter for me, please. As clear as possible, please. Thanks.
I think we have conflated three issues, okay? But to deal with the one at hand, which is the issue of the medical orders to wholesalers, what the chief medical officer has said is correct. It happens, but I am unaware of the extent to which it happens. But I know that it happens. I do not think it is happening to the extent that pharmacies will be put in jeopardy. That's just my private opinion. But I know that it happens. I also know that wholesalers do not sell to persons unless they have an order from a doctor. I get what my sense of what is happening is that it happens with high-priced, hard-to-come-by drugs. When you have new drugs in the system, not all the pharmacies may carry them, especially if they're very expensive. I'm talking about drugs that may cost about, say, anything like over $500 for a box of 28s, right? So persons may then choose this methodology. I can't say how prevalent it is, but I know that it happens. Now, to conflate that issue with the fact that people can't get drugs and it's coming in these suitcases. The ones that are coming in these suitcases are not the ones that you're getting orders to go to the wholesalers for. The drugs that are coming in by suitcase is the normal stuff that people buy. So you have these people going around.
Example? Could you give us an example?
The antibiotics, they are notorious for coming in suitcases. And that's why when the inspectors go, your records are off. Because it suits you. People think they're pleasing their customer. So somebody wants an antibiotic, but you don't have a prescription. You don't want to go to the doctor to get a prescription. So you go to the pharmacy and say, I want to get so-and-so. And they give it to you. Where are they getting it to give it to you from? If they take it from the source they buy legally, they will be in trouble. But you have people offering things under the counter, or over the counter, or through the back door. And those come in by suitcase trade. Okay? Those are the ones that come in by suitcase trade. The other thing that comes in by suitcase trade are items that are no longer sold in Trinidad. For one reason or another, they may be off the market. So you have things that are off the market and people feel they still want it. Somebody brings it in and you pay the price for it. You have other drugs, and this may be a bit of registration where the original source has ceased, and because we are now hooked on to the Latin America thing, you may be getting a particular product from England. It no longer can come here, so people bring it in, and you go and get it because this is what you want. So we have that undercurrent, as well as our Caribbean neighbor, Barbados, for instance, in their time of woe, because of their particular drug service, people go and access drugs there and bring it into Trinidad. It's kind of like, if I buy it in Barbados, I buy it from the pharmacist and them over there, who will then charge the government for it. It's a kind of fraud, right?
Yes, we know that exists where because actually the government will buy the medication, supply there, and some reach to Trinidad. So,
not some, plenty.
Well, so again, we do not disservice to our CARICOM.
Right. Mr. Chairman, the thing is, so if it's Mr. Chairman, the question is, if it's a violation, and if it's being mentioned by Mr. Harmon and whoever, somebody have to blow the whistle. Somebody have to send a report to the Minister of Health, the Permanent Secretary, to say, well, look, this is a violation taking place. Right? I think we have ascertained it's happening. You know, who is that person that's going to do it?
That's why I talk about the inspections. Because it's only inspections that will show that when you do your cycle and you find people with stuff that they can't account for with invoices that they have purchased.
Okay.
Because when you buy this thing underneath, you don't get an invoice. All right? So it's only inspections that show that up. And we don't have the technology for counterfeiting at that level. So the idea is that all purchases that are made by a pharmacy must come from a reputable, quote-unquote, distributor. Because then they have invoices to show where they have bought from the manufacturer. So what you're doing is a supply chain coming from a manufacturer to the local distributor, to the pharmacy. And then you're sure that your clients are buying.
So, thank you. So I understand what you're saying there. Therefore, we need more drug inspectors out there to be doing that job, right? So the ministry will have to do that. But two things I wanted to just elaborate on. Mr. Glenn Maraj, you mentioned that Superfarm does an excellent service by opening till 11 in the night to provide pharmaceuticals for individuals. What happens after 11? Could anything be instituted that after 11 someone is ill, they need some medication? Is there any way the Ministry of Health could have a service offered to the public? Because just as how Mount Hope had started with a public-private, you pay for certain services, is there a way after 12 at night somebody needs some sort of medication, they can access it in also the public service? So I want to hear your take on it and probably Ministry.
Well, we we've had in the past a 24-hour service. That was many, many, many years ago. But with crime, that is a big issue. We have, because our stores are built with drive-thrus. So our position was that customers can access these drugs through a drive-thru. The challenge we have with that is that we do not see a large number of people, customers, actually come into our stores beyond a certain time. We still have that, and that is up for review, but you'd find customers do not want to travel and go to a location beyond a certain time. It's something that we will want to review and reassess again if there's an opportunity, especially in certain locations where we are in the east. One or two of our locations could possibly operate a 24 service in that regard. The issue here is volume, and the challenge here is crime. But in our stores, we are well protected, but the customers have challenges with that.
So I understand, is the pharmacy in the hospitals open? Is there like a pharmacist there available to give medication to the wards? And also, do you think it is advisable to have some sort of service available for persons who may need medication? Because there's an element of persons may not be a large amount, but is it a possibility we could look at? Yeah.
Yes, at the public health system, the hospitals, we do have a 24 hours inpatient service for patients who are on the ward. We do have pharmacists on call as well in all of the public health institutions. There have been some discussions with respect to pharmacies opening in the public health institutions later hours, but in some instances, I think in Eric Williams, we have up until 10 o'clock. But for patients on the ward, and that's for the outpatients, but for patients on the ward, we do have a 24-hour service. There is a pharmacist on call at all public health institutions that require that service.
So let's say a patient runs out of GT and they had medication 2 o'clock in the morning and needs it. I think they may have to go through the whole system to get their medication. Yeah.
No, for those kinds of cases, you have to go to the emergency department.
Yes.
Yeah?
Chairman, I just want to go back to Superfarm. You are probably the only corporate pharmacy in Trinidad and Tobago, or the largest. You are the only chain in Trinidad and Tobago, and you have brought a lot of international pharmacy in terms of marketing and so on to Trinidad and Tobago. My question to you, you have in your paper, you had a number of recommendations that, and some of them had to do with the pharmaceutical board. Are you a member of the board or of the society, the pharmaceutical society, and in terms of what contribution you would have, be able to make there, in addition to your business itself?
We are a member of the society, the pharmacy society. We are a member of the society. We are members of the pharmacy board through our pharmacist employed by Superfarm. So we are members in that context. Your question is a very good question. I think that we are one of the largest chains in Trinidad, and I think it presents an opportunity for us to be, perhaps, to play a more active role in the future in terms of governance, the practices, in terms of the services that we offer. And I agree with that because that was something that was discussed a bit earlier, where you don't necessarily, and I think the chairman mentioned it, because we've seen various societies, whether it's the firm of chartered accountants. I'm a chartered accountant by profession, and I'm running a pharmacy business. So we've seen the cross-functional members and skill set come in more and more rather than just pharmacists. So I think if we have to look into the future, the council, what are the laws that currently exist within the pharmacy board? How can we enhance it so that we can make these kinds of changes? And then secondly, things like the council, I think the more active the council plays with respect to the functioning of the pharmacy board, I think it will make a big difference in terms of delivery of service overall to Trinidad and Tobago.
Chairman, I just want to say for the record, our inquiry focuses on public safety. Pharmaceutical is a business. It is not a charity. It is, people don't go into the business of pharmaceuticals just to help people, right? They go into it to make money. But the pharmacies and whether it is a single pharmacy or a chain, they ought to have a responsibility in the governance aspect of regulation, of participating. You have a pharmaceutical board, a pharmacy board that has challenges with having a quorum to conduct the meetings recommended in the act that governs them. You have a pharmaceutical society, and it appears that the pharmacists in Trinidad and Tobago are not taking up that mantle to participate in the regulation and the governance because it does not impact on their ability to make money. It does not impact on their ability to find a job if they are not a member of the society, if they are not a member of the board, if they don't participate in these activities. And maybe it is time for us to consider some sort of recommendation that would encourage or provide an incentive for the professionals in the pharmacy industry to participate in a meaningful way, as opposed to simply just for employment purposes. So, Mr. Chairman, through you, I want to implore our stakeholders, if you have suggestions to make to the committee in that regard, you could. I appreciate that the CEO of Superfarm has indicated that you recognize that your pharmacists could play a more important role or could be a little more active, but you are one business entity, and there are so many others. So I want to ask the members here if you could make a recommendation.
Can I just respond to the members' comment? I think it's an excellent feedback. The fact that Superfarm is present here today is an indication that we really want to see a transformation for the way we operate the pharmacy business and profession in Trinidad and Tobago. So I think the fact that we have this committee in place, I think that in itself is a positive step. And when you look at countries like United States, if you go back in time, they were in very similar positions to ourselves, but the stakeholders were all aligned towards a common objective. So if we are all aligned to a common objective of enhancing what we do and take it to another level, we have key stakeholders that must be involved for us to achieve it. We talk about the ministry, we talk about the medical board, we talk about the various acts, the Antibiotics Act, all these various laws that we have in place. It's an opportunity for us to revisit and look at, for us to move forward. From our perspective as well, as I've mentioned, we will want to play an active role today and in the future for us to not only use the pharmacists, but our skill and what we could bring to the table for enhancing the industry. So I think that is a positive move, and I'm sure we can rally the private sector, some of the larger companies as well, to go along that front so we can enhance the entire industry. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Sure, okay.
You know, in the various submissions received, Mr. Chairman, you know, the Pharmaceutical Society, you know, sort of zeroed in clearly into what we're trying to achieve, you know, with this joint select committee. And you indicated and I quote, "The consistent shortages of drugs result in hoarding at pharmacies." Right, you mentioned that in your discourse to us. That would have been on question 13, page 19. Right, the consistent shortage of drugs resulting in the hoarding at pharmacies. And yes, right, and my question, yes, and my question to you there would be, how prevalent is this practice of hoarding of drugs among pharmacies in Trinidad and Tobago, one? And secondly, also in your submission, NIPDEC continues to still send close expiry goods to an institution without notification. You with me on that one also? Lovely. Define how close to expiry items these usually are, right? Example, whether it's 1 month, 2 months, 3 months to the expiry date. And then again, how come could they send it to the institution without notification? And then also my first question to that. Shed some light, please.
Sorry. Yes, in terms of I'll take the second question first, right? In terms of the close expiry, they could be anything like a month to 3 months. Now, I understand how it happens because sometimes NIPDEC, that would be, you don't have an item and you get an offer. You get an offer that I will sell you this item. I know it's close to the date. You will only pay for what you use. That is fine, because as long as you use it before the expiry date, it's good. But what happened in the past is that you would get a call and they would say to you, you've ordered item X, you asked me for maybe 50 or 60, I have some, it's expiring in a month, 2 months or 3 months, how much you can use? And you would say, well, okay, I think I could probably use about 10 or 20, and that's what you will get. So, in effect, you will get the drug, your clients will have the drug, but you would not receive the expired ones to then stay on your inventory and have to dispose of it later.
How long after a drug is expired can you use it? Or can you use a drug that is expired?
You are not supposed to.
You're not supposed to.
You're not supposed to. Okay. However, if it is life and death, you then, if you don't have it and you die, well then, but that's a decision the doctor will take.
Okay. But just for my sole information,
yes.
So like the little vitamins I take in home, vitamin C and E and so on, and it expires, still you should not.
I would have to say that if you take it, the expiry date is given because the manufacturer will cover any defects up to that date. All right? If you use it after the date and something goes wrong, you have no redress. But if you use it before and something goes wrong, the manufacturer is liable.
And NIPDEC now supposed to come back and take those off the market?
Well, the point is, they're not even supposed to send it to you. They should only send what you tell them that you can use.
Okay, so Ministry of Health, you need to follow up on that particular aspect. And on the first question that I would have asked, the hoarding.
Yeah, well, that happens because the original computerized system at NIPDEC had what we call a back order. All right? So you fill in certain things. You have a maximum level, a minimum level, and a reorder level. And they would use that to determine what they will send you based on when you fill in the things, right? What is happening now is that the back order has been dispensed with. So they send you whatever. And because there is no true back order system working there, you don't want to run out. So you will say, you can't get this, yeah? So let me just put in another order again. And you end up with more than you can probably use within a month, 2 months, or 3 months. So you end up hoarding. That's basically what it is.
Now, besides being the president, are you a registered pharmacy?
Oh, yes.
Pharmacist, and do you have a practicing service?
Currently,
a pharmacy?
I am well, you see the gray hair, right? So I have retired.
That have nothing to do with it.
Right, no. I was a pharmacist with the public service for about 40 years, and then I retired, but because they couldn't get anybody to work in the prison, I currently work in the prison.
Okay. So you're talking from a point of view
Yes,
of
I
facts
could tell you about the
information.
expired stuff up to last month.
Okay. So I think, Minister of Health, PS division, could you just shed some light on the hoarding aspect and, what plans are in train and with the inspectorate on the hoarding and the expiry drugs and so on?
Sure, thank you, through the chair. So with regard to the issue of the hoarding or having more stock than you actually use, what we've done at the ministry, we are in the process of implementing a new IT system across the supply chain from NIPDEC at this warehouse to every hospital and health center. We've actually started, and that should be done over the next 9 months. It's on a phase basis. Once that is in place, you'd have visibility across the supply chain. So even if a health center or hospital gets the drug twice, we can, NIPDEC, the ministry, can look at it and say, okay, you've gotten 500 tablets, but your average usage is only 10 a month, so you seem to have too much in stock. All right, so that system will allow us to pick those instances up. All right, that's with regard to the hoarding. With regard to the expired drugs, NIPDEC is on here, so I don't want to speak on NIPDEC's behalf, but we have flagged some of the same issues to NIPDEC in terms of managing the issue of expired drugs or close to expired drugs, and what Ms. Walker said is correct. NIPDEC should only take those drugs from the supplier where there's no obligation to keep them, and the supplier has a clear contractual obligation to take it back if it's not used, at no cost to the state.
And we are anticipating that, based on your earlier statements with regards to the inspectorate being fully manned within the near future, I think we'll be operating on a computerized basis where we'll be able to have statistics and information clearly logged so that we'll clearly know exactly. Because, like for instance, as a member of parliament, again, individuals would come to our offices inquiring about, my pharmacies not have this. I will make a call to the Ministry of Health and they will say, okay, collect it at X pharmacy, with regard to the CDAP. So it's not that it will not be a shortage, it's just that it may be elsewhere, right? And so I think we need to ensure that, that balance is created across the board, to ensure that, proper efficiency and so on. Right, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman, one of the issues identified by the Pharmaceutical Society is with regards to a suggestion for increased fees to be a member of the pharmacy board. The Pharmaceutical Society has also indicated that there is a need for audited financial statements of the board for previous years or statements that are outstanding. And these issues might be preventing pharmacists from participating in activities of the board. Can the president of the board respond?
Yes, so we all for the, in terms of the specifics, a pharmacist pays $150 a year to be a pharmacist, which is $12.50 a month to be a pharmacist. So, and a pharmacy pays us $850 a year, which is around $75 a month. We don't have 1 million pharmacists, so it's not 12 million we just get. We don't have 1,000 pharmacists, so it's not 12,000 we just get from that a month. So even that has been a sticking point in relation to assisting us with the fees. We did have someone who used to remain at $5,000 a year for the auditing purposes, and now he is not able to keep it at that, so we even have challenges in paying the audit fees at $12.50 a month per pharmacist. So it didn't start with that. It started, I think I mentioned last time, with an accident that the person used to keep the, you call that, financial records, and then it deteriorated into an inability to have sufficient funds. But if I could, I wanted to respond to one thing that a lot of cold water was thrown on. Yes, doctors were aware in the past that they could send for their practice to get medication. They are now being actively informed on a continuing basis that they could also send their patients to get the medication. So Ms. Walcott has mentioned that she was really from the public sector. I have never worked in the public sector. I've been working in the private sector for 30 years. The extent of the problem is approximately 65 to 70% countrywide. And some that patients are circumventing the pharmacies to their own peril and going to the wholesalers. And
excuse me, Mr. Chairman,
yes.
1 second. But Mr. Harmon, if you are making that statement and you sit as the president of this board, what are you doing about it?
I did mention that they are getting a legal document to do it. And secondly, we need persons who are benefiting now from that cheaper price to come and squeal on them.
No, but
you don't get that. That doesn't
Mr.
happen.
Harmon, Mr. Chairman, what I am saying, I hear you on the whole legal aspect and what is your responsibility and what is your guidelines. But you are saying that you may not have the evidence, but you have information. Pen the document, whether it's to the permanent secretary, whether it's to the president of the Pharmaceutical Society.
I don't, first of all, I think maybe the way the member is phrasing the question mightn't be coming across the way it should be. The question is,
Chairman,
whether
in all fairness, I asked my question.
All right. Well, Mr. Chairman, and in all fairness, I just want to phrase a question, a similar question. I want to phrase it differently. The Pharmacy Board has a duty to regulate pharmacies and pharmacists. The Pharmacy Board has identified an issue with wholesalers for pharmaceutical products. The question is, has this issue been referred to in any official manner to those who are in charge, the Ministry of Health, for example, and what action can they or have they taken?
Well, it has. I do not think that the ministry, that's what my view was, and this is why it didn't go towards the ministry, was that the ministry would not get involved in the specific trade. What we have done is to have discussions with the wholesalers about it. I have taken it for, this is what I have done then, and the wholesalers keep promoting that they are providing an additional service. And the evidence of the proliferation of it is that there used to be one branch in the country for each one. Now they are going to different branches.
Mr. Harmon, excuse.
Yes.
I think we have ventilated this enough
Yes.
where you brought your point over. Doctors
Yes.
seem to be, what I don't want to put it in, well, cut it into the market of the pharmacist, right? Because it means that so the pharmacies, I mean, you've seen that there's difficulties. Doctors are now doing that. So it's a disservice for two reasons. You say economically wise for the pharmacists. It's you may have pharmacies closing down, and the second reason too is the service you're giving, mentioning about side effects, drug interaction is not there, right? So I think we should now go further now and say that could we get some system in place where you could probably write to the ministry, have some public service where you could, inform the members of the public about the service, and so that's one thing. Second thing I'd like to know, but even though that is right, I just want to ask you something. The ministry we had asked a question to the ministry about, with reference to your written submissions dated June 21st, 2019, you indicated that 26 non-nationals are employed as pharmacists within the regional health authorities. Now, we are understanding that pharmacies may close down, they're seeing hard times, right? But yet still now you are having pharmacists, non-nationals coming in. What is your take on that, Mr. Harmon? Is it in terms of language barriers too, I don't know if these pharmacists speak English fluently and would not be able to service their clients also. Yeah.
Well, we're presently overproducing pharmacists in Trinidad. And in fact, when the Minister of Labor was here on the last occasion, I was discussing the committee that they have to look at that problem. So there is an agreement that in fact, no work permits have been granted. People who previously had work permits, foreigners, are now not being granted. And there was an issue where the ministry had persisted and brought in some pharmacists quite recently. So we have an issue, and they gave it their reason of the remuneration package. But in my mind, if pharmacists are not getting work, local pharmacists, they will take a cut in salary. So there is an issue where we are producing, this year we just produced, I think it's 57 pharmacists. They used to, evidence of it, they used to start their pre-registration immediately. They are not getting to start their pre-registration until 3 months later, sometimes 4 months later. And that is because there's insufficient space to accommodate them. And usually, when they finish the pre-registration, they will immediately continue to be employed in the government service. Many of them are not being employed in the government service because they do not have the space to take them. So there was a concern about if it is in truth and in fact that they are not being employed. The locals cannot find employment, and opportunities for employment are being reduced. There was a concern on our side about why are foreigners continuing to be imported by the government sector.
Well, I have a list here that pharmacy, the fees for local pharmacists, for pharmacist 1, may basic salary 9,456, 11,802. Pharmacist 2 goes up to 12,227, and pharmacist 3, 13,263. But the foreign pharmacists are paid for $7,400 with allowances $4,100. So I don't know if it's really economic, just on the part a decision, or if the ministry could elaborate. Is it a government arrangement? I don't know. Could you elaborate this?
Sure, thank you, Chair. So it is basically an economic issue. We, as I mentioned at the last sitting we would have had, the respective RHs would have advertised the positions, and we're just not getting persons interested in taking up employment. I mean, just like Mr. Harmon said, if there are additional graduates coming out, they might be willing now at this point to take the salary that's being offered. All right, but it is not a decision that we take foreigners first. It is locals first, and if we don't have the persons taking it up, yeah?
Mr. Ford.
We are told many pharmacies are operating without pharmacists or full-time pharmacists, right? I wouldn't quote who we got that information from, right? But we got that information. Could we identify how many pharmacies within Trinidad and Tobago are operating without full-time pharmacists, or not? Yeah, feel free.
That is a little stressed, because in order to run a pharmacy, you must have a license. And the license gives the pharmacist's name, it gives a relief, and it tells you the hours of how long the pharmacy is going to be open for and who will be at what time. The current practice now is for somebody to license the pharmacy, and the pharmacy owner will then get somebody else to do the hours, as we say in the business. That is what is going on. Many times, even though you have a license with a pharmacist name, the pharmacist is not in the business. All right? And that is the reason why I come back to the inspections. Only inspections will reveal this. Because you are legal, you have a license on the wall, you have a pharmacy license, you have a pharmacist who is supposed to be the person working, you also have the hours of work, you have a relief. But when you go in there, nobody is there.
So my question then, how can you identify a pharmacist when you go to a pharmacy?
Well, you're supposed to have a license on the wall, and you're supposed to have...
With a name?
With a name and a picture.
Okay.
And you're supposed to see the person is the license holder then, as the person to whom the license has been given. Right. If you have a relief pharmacist, you're also supposed to see a practicing certificate.
With a picture?
No, you don't get a picture with that one, but you have a practicing certificate with a name on it.
Right.
But the thing is, the clientele I don't think our clientele has been educated to that fact. Because sometimes where the license is placed, as a client walking in, you wouldn't even see it.
So my next question, therefore, you go to fill a prescription, all right? On the bottle that you are getting, it's supposed to have how your dosage is supposed to be taken based on what the doctor or the hospital would have submitted to you. And it's supposed to have an initial on, they don't put the initial on the...
No, that's not our law.
That's not our law?
No.
So therefore you can
abroad.
fill a prescription without the pharmacist being there at the pharmacy?
Oh, yes.
That is not a violation?
Of course it's a violation. The only person allowed to fill a prescription is the pharmacist, and you may have an assistant who you are supposed to supervise.
So the dispensary clerks and so on at these locations. So you see, there's the question, if you cannot identify who is the pharmacist, they should not therefore be filling your prescription when you go to the drugstore or the pharmacy.
That's why pharmacy runs on ethics. That's why pharmacy is closely regulated. The fact remains is that if you license a pharmacy, you're supposed to be there. If you're not there, then you need to have relief. Yes, I know you may run out for a couple hours or an hour to get lunch or to carry a sick to the hospital, but in that case, your people are supposed to say, well, the pharmacist isn't here right now, they'll be back shortly, do you want to wait, do you want to come back? But you see, it's an ethical business. When persons operate without ethics, this is what happens. And to encourage ethics is like, what do you say? Verify. So you need to verify. And the only verification is the constant inspection.
Now, I have a particular pharmacy. I think everybody have a pharmacy that they would go to on a regular basis, right? Once or twice, I would probably go into Superfarm, right? And correct me if I'm wrong, Superfarm, at your dispensary and so on, your pharmacist is clearly identified? How you all operate at your location? Through you, Mr. Chair.
Sure. We have qualified pharmacists operating from the moment we open to close. We do not practice. That is never an issue for us. We always have qualified pharmacists operating. Their clothing as well, I think, their attire, we have them in white jackets to identify the pharmacist on duty.
So again, permanent sec, PS, and again to Dr. Parisram, those are things that we have in the pipeline, in the system coming forward in order to ensure that, these persons can be clearly identified. Because again, Mrs. Ford Walcott, just identified, which is saying that once you go to this dispensary, this pharmacy, you should not be given the particular item. Shed some light, please.
So, Mr. Chair, within the public sector, it is definite that it's a pharmacist and a pharmacist only who would dispense a medication to the citizens who access service via the public health system. The private sector, however, with respect to pharmacists and a licensed pharmacist, the license given by the pharmacy board, and a registered pharmacist. So the licensed pharmacist would be the one who has the license to operate the pharmacy and would be given the antibiotic and narcotic and the controlled drugs license to sell, store, sell, and distribute those medication. There would also be what Ms. Walcott would have referred to as the relief pharmacist, who is a registered pharmacist and can conduct the business of the licensed pharmacist given their authority to do it. So that is what is supposed to happen, but definitely with the public health system, it is only a pharmacist who dispenses to the public health persons accessing medication through that system. The dispensary clerk or the pharmacy assistant would be able to, upon supervision, so the pharmacist must be there supervising the pharmacy assistant and or the dispensary clerk. But the private sector is where that would exist.
Okay, final. So, Mr. Harmon, you have any jurisdiction there, your board?
Yes, full jurisdiction.
So what are you doing about that?
Nothing.
What do you plan to do about it?
Oh, I was about to tell you, nothing at $12.50 a month. We need funding to employ inspectors, and the inspectors would assist us with that. So the members, even though the full 10 was on board, don't get income per se from the pharmacy, from the board. And in that sense, they have to be employed. So in years gone by when things were better, there were some pharmacy board inspectors, but we use the money at this point paying rent, and we do not have the funding to send out any inspectors.
And final question for me, Mr. Chairman. When is your next AGM?
This one will come off because it is an election one. It will be in February of 2020.
And you all allow observers at these meetings?
I tried to bring observers when we had a problem, and the membership voted against it.
So if this committee would like to come as observers, could we receive an invitation?
Gladly, I would like you all to see the behavior.
So send us an invitation through you, Mr. Chair.
But if there's a decision that, has the board taken a decision about observers? Is that?
Well, there's a loophole in terms of the scrutineers, where if the council did not appoint at its meeting before the election, if the council did not appoint scrutineers, then the chairman has the authority, and when the council appoints, it must be a pharmacist. But when the council don't appoint, and the chairman has to do it, he can choose anyone. And that is where, because we have invited, at that time I think we invited the press actually, so that the press could properly report on the chaos and so on. And the membership voted. I personally invited them. Let me rephrase that. I invited persons who were not pharmacists, and the meeting took a decision that they want them removed from the meeting, and I complied.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I'd like to just one thing. I'd like to declare this Mr. Ford's interest in coming here is not really shared by the chairman. I don't think that's our function, but if he's willing, well, okay.
Yeah, Chairman.
Oh, just before we move away from the matter of inspection, I know Principal Pharmacist has indicated that we do public sector pharmacies, and our pharmacist will be there. It is part of the remit of the Drug Inspectorate, as we have heard before, to inspect the private pharmacies as well. Although Mr. Rahman says the pharmacy board doesn't do it, we do it through two avenues, through the Drug Inspectorate, as well as through the NIPTEC arrangement that we have for CDAP pharmacies. There's about 240 odd pharmacies that we have in the CDAP program, and all of them will be inspected by CDAP monitors to ensure the pharmacist is there as well as other things. So the inspection is occurring from our side. All right, and if we find errant pharmacists, we do refer it back to Mr. Rahman for his action.
So I see the fact that the NIPDEC inspectors are working with your inspectors, so hopefully something will be done there. Again, there's a deficiency of your inspectors also in your department, but it's a funding. So somehow we will have the more inspectors on board, the more vigilance will be there out there for the public. Yeah.
Walcott had something.
Chair, I would like to come back to the issue of meetings. According to the Act, we're supposed to have an AGM every year. That does not happen.
Yes, ma'am, I understand your concern, but I think you may have to bring up that with...
No, I'm just moving on to the money part of it. Mm-hmm. Because part of the problem with the money is that we haven't seen statements of accounts, even unaudited, for the last how long? And while I agree the money may not be sufficient to do all that is necessary, you can't go to the minister to ask for an increase in fees if you don't provide audited statements of where the money has gone.
Good. So if you write to the minister could probably ask for some sort of statements from the association, probably better transparency. So I think that could be channeled elsewhere, directed to the Minister of Health, who will probably look into that. I think in terms of time, Senate is sitting soon, we may want to wrap up soon, so I don't know if Ms. Harmon has any.
Chairman, thank you. I was worried that this committee might be getting into internal politics of pharmaceutical organizations as opposed to dealing with the public business and the safety of the public. One of my concerns, Chairman, a number of pharmacies in Trinidad and Tobago carry vitamins, over-the-counter drugs, and so on, that are part of international lines of health and wellness and that kind of drive. All of these require approval by the Chemistry and Drug Division. Does the inspections of the the drugs, I don't want to say medication, of the products at pharmacies that may not be drugs. They may be vitamins, they may be other wellness products, and so on, that are over the counter or actually in shelves. You could walk and pick them up. Who regulates that, and who double checks as to whether only regulated or approved products are on sale?
That falls under the Drug Advisory Committee of the Ministry of Health. So any new drug, vitamin, whatever it may be, comes through the Drug Advisory Committee and is approved by the Drug Advisory Committee.
And I'm saying this, Mr. Chair, particularly in the light of some especially like diet products and so on, that have been exposed as dangerous. I'm also saying this with regard to vitamins that are, or products that are called vitamins, that where you have fairy dusting and so on, very minute amount of the mineral or the vitamin in the product, but the product is on sale, and the public at the end of the day is in danger. People put themselves in danger by utilizing products that promise you to lose weight and so on. And those are not drugs that fall under the licenses described earlier, antibiotics, the regulated drugs. How do you regulate and ensure that the products that
they don't fall under the antibiotics and
or,
narcotics, but they
or
fall.
Can you receive complaints, and then how do you treat with them?
Yes, but they do, yeah, as I said, they fall under the Drug Advisory Committee, which deals with everything else outside of antibiotics and narcotics. Anything that comes into the country has the importer has to apply to Food and Drug, submit a sample, submit a dossier, a scientific dossier for us to read, and we can do testing if need be to ensure that it is a suitable sample before it goes to the market. And it has to get the approval of the committee, who recommends to the Minister of Health whether the drug should be brought in or not, and the Minister then gives approval.
Can the public or any practitioner make a complaint about a product to the board?
Anybody can complain. You could complain either to the Chief Medical Officer's office or the Chemistry, Food and Drug Division directly. And as well, if we dispense with any public sector, there's a standard operating procedure for complaints to be generated and sent back up to the Principal Pharmacist's office as well.
Okay, so in concluding, I would like to just make a comment. Mr. Harmon, you mentioned a lot of things that needs improvement, but you also mentioned that even the registration of drugs, it's much to be desired, that certain medication you need, fast approvals. But you did admit that there's an improvement, right? So that's what I like to hear, improvement. So the ministry, thank you for that improvement, because a lot of persons complained before it was a long wait. So there is an improvement, and I appreciate you coming forth with that. And then so, with that positive note, I'd like to now, invite closing comments. And first of all, I'd like Mr. Asif Ali, if you can give some closing comments on this.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks again to the committee members and my colleagues for the comments, suggestions that were made. The ministry will follow up on some of these. We have taken note of them. Just very quickly, just to recap, we have the breaches in the Narcotics and Antibiotics Act that were picked up by our Drug Inspectorate. Notwithstanding, we submit them to Pharmacy Board. We do follow up on those, but I think there's a need for maybe having a more robust database. And I mentioned the IT system, so that's something we're taking on board. We will follow up, which we've been doing with the Service Commission Department with regard to staff. That is a critical success factor for us. The ID system alone will not do it. We need the bodies on the ground to have the inspections done on a really timely basis. All right, so that's something we will follow up on, and we look forward to any submissions from the relevant agencies, the Pharmaceutical Society, Pharmacy Board, with regard to any changes they want to recommend with regard to legislation. And again, as I said at the last meeting, and I say it again, the ministry is open to any suggestion in terms of fees that need to be increased with a proposal from the Pharmacy Board with the relevant supporting documentation, and we will then consider that suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ali. I thank you for your submission before, and you brought up with NIPDEC and the whole idea of drug expiry. And I mean, wonderful suggestions you made, and I'm now asking you if you can just give us some brief closing remarks.
Yes, I need to thank you for allowing us to participate in this inquiry. I've taken on board a lot of suggestions that I've heard around me, and it means that my executive and myself, we have a lot more work to do. I think we probably need to go on a public education campaign so that the public will know what they should be getting and compare it with what they are actually getting. And that may make a difference, because then once you know, you can now be critical of the service that you are receiving. So again, I thank you very much for allowing us to be here.
Thank you. And Mr. Harmon, you brought up some very important points, and I'm hoping that, you know, together we can all look at improving the situation. And I invite any closing remarks.
Yeah, just to say that the Pharmacy Council is doing its utmost at this point. Superpharm did admit that they were never in a situation that they did not have their licenses. So I think a complaint would have come from them about ability to get the license, and so I don't think that is an issue, but he did mention we're looking at higher ground. So we will foster that relationship to ensure that we achieve something better. And it is my hope that the authorities, including ourselves, look at ways of preserving the pharmacist practice and the pharmacy out there, because they have a significant problem with that wholesaling thing and with doctors dispensing. There's another confusion. Thank you.
Noted. Mr. Glenn Maraj, I again appreciate that you brought in the fact that the service you are doing, especially now till 11 o'clock at night, we're hoping to go back to 24 hours to provide some service. Yes, it's a needed service, and but it's a needed service to the patient. So could you give us some closing remarks?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members. Thank you, all the participants. I think it was a wonderful opportunity to meet some of the other members. It's clearly, the fact it's a wonderful opportunity, it also presents a gap, and a gap meaning that I think the member, Ms. Amin, who mentioned how can the private sector and how can Superpharm play a more integral part in terms of improving the standards and the way we operate. And I see this as a wonderful opportunity. I look forward to the outcome of these meetings with some clear goals or objectives that we could define, and all of us being aligned so that we could work collectively to improve the standards here in Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Maraj. And again, I support your sentiments that we will try our utmost best. It's for the patient's benefit, and I think together we can achieve, you know, something that will help the patients actually out there. And I would like to thank all the members and the officials for the attendance this morning. And I'd like to thank committee members and members of staff for their participation and support. And at this stage, it's 12:34. I'd like to, if there's no further business for consideration, I'd like to adjourn this meeting today. Okay. Thank you.